When Boston was hit by the COVID-19 pandemic last year, the city's public school system had just finished work on a 5-year strategic plan. As the schools advance to the next stage of reopening, officials are refining another plan to use federal relief money over the next 3 years, going from return and recovery to reimagining. We're talking about $400 million from the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, or ESSER fund. To give us an update on the plan is Boston School Superintendent Brenda Cassellius. Thank you very much for being with us, Superintendent.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's glad to be here.
Superintendent, one of the things that struck me about this plan right away is that if you look at the amount of money involved, this seems to be less about returning to normal than doing something different.
It really is. We have really categorized it about returning strong, making sure that we recover well with our students, and also that we reimagine how we think about school. As you know, we closed down and we issued every student a laptop. And so it really does get us to think about how can we do things differently now in terms of the virtual opportunities for students, as well as those in-person opportunities, and how can we share across classrooms and share across schools and do more activities with students that are hands-on.
One of the areas where you want to use some of this money is sort of the distressed schools, the schools with declining enrollment. How could some of this money help those schools?
Well, we did a big help with the schools this past year with our operational budget. So we knew that we had declining enrollment, and we didn't want our schools cutting things like arts programming or their librarian or other types of programs like PE. So we were able to use $18.5 million of the $100 million 3-year commitment that we had gotten from former Mayor Walsh and was affirmed by current acting Mayor Kim Janey, that we are able to use that $36 million for operational investments this year. 18.5 of that was to hold our schools harmless for any kind of enrollment drop. So we aren't really taking out any funding from ESSER to deal with enrollment drop, but we did out of our operational budget.
I see there is more spending on people like social workers in the schools. What is the rationale? Certainly we've heard about the need for that, but what do you see being done with this?
Well, that's another area too, because we wouldn't want to invest in social workers when every school is going to have a social worker now, which we're really excited about. We added some social workers the year prior in some of our transformation schools, but this year every school is going to get a social worker and a family liaison to help support families and so that they can help navigate crisis. So we'll have this team of a nurse, a family liaison, a social worker. We're going to be adding counselors with some of the ESSER funding. This is going to provide a nice support team for children and families. Really excited about it, but these are really still operational investments that we made with this year's operations budget. And it's hard for the public to know the difference between the two. So our operational budget is our ongoing budget, and our ESSER money is $400 million of one-time funding that we get. And you can't depend on that to pay for positions year after year after year. So that has to come out of our Operation General Fund and just part of our normal business, which it should be when it's these kinds of investments around staff investments. So we're really excited about these new positions because they will directly support children's mental health, directly support families in accessing support and resources for their families and for their children. And so that was really important. So we put it in the operational budget.
During the summer, there was a higher enrollment of students in summer learning and in enrichment programs, but there was a problem with many English language learners. Is that just about summer programming, or is this about a year-round problem that you're going to be dealing with, maybe with some help from ESSER funding?
So I think what happened with our summer enrollment was that we still are having some significant hesitation around parents sending their children to school because of the COVID inability to have their children vaccinated. And so we're still seeing some hesitation, and disproportionately we're seeing that within the Latinx community and the Black community, that there's still some heightened fear around sending their children to school.
What about the job of the multilingual liaisons? Is this basically to maybe get people to see things a little differently, or maybe to help them with assorted problems that they might have other challenges as well?
Yeah, so it's really important for our family liaisons to have linguistic diversity so that we can help families navigate our systems, make sure they have the information. Oftentimes that can become a barrier. Language other than English can become a barrier for our families. And so we want to make sure that we eliminate all those barriers as best we can. And so adding this position of family liaisons who speak languages that are predominant language at the school will help us. We've also ramped up our interpretation services and our translation services at our public meetings, which is really helping to make our public meetings and decision-making much more accessible to families, which they've given us good feedback on.
I want to ask you about the reimagining part of this money, since that really is the bulk of the money. How could that work?
Well, we spent a lot of time talking to our families and to our community. We had a public commission that helped us look at some of these investments and how we might equitably get the money out to schools and support our children and their families. And what we have heard is parents really want us to take a focus on students with disabilities, ensure that we're catching up on some of the learning loss that we anticipate we'll see with our students when they return in the fall, to provide summer opportunities and before and after care. Families are really interested in before and after care programs and how can we reimagine the school day that way. Also, they want to see us provide equitable opportunities across all schools, making sure kids have access to arts, access to physical education, access to really wonderful, joyful learning environments. So there was also interest in libraries being built, interest in playgrounds being built, interest in our facilities being upgraded to 21st century learning facilities. So lots of interest in our parents and our teachers also saying, we need to pay attention to our facilities, that the time has come to really turn our attention that way. We'll start with some health and safety investments. We're looking at investing in HVAC. We've put out an RFP, a request for proposal for 6,000 window air conditioners, because as you know, climate change is not getting better, unfortunately, and the days do seem to get hotter, and we want to make sure that you're comfortable when you're learning. So that's one thing. And then there's this overall academic recovery that we need to do for all of our students, not just our EL students, our students who are learning English, or our students with disabilities, but all students we anticipate will need a little boost, as well as some support for the trauma that we've all experienced over these past 2 years. I mean, this is now the third school year that will be disrupted due to COVID.
I know the city administration is on board with having people in school buildings wear masks, but what about vaccinations? Because a lot of parents might feel protective about their children, and they might think that having an adolescent get a shot is more about protecting other people. What's the strategy for dealing with the mixed feelings out there?
Well, there are a lot of mixed feelings out there, so I want to acknowledge that. I do also want to make sure that the public knows that the best way for all of us to be safe, including our children, because they are getting sick as well, is important for us all to be vaccinated. There are lots of locations around the city to get vaccinated. They can go to boston.gov and they can get information on how to get vaccinated. Your local CVS and Walgreens and others. Lots of churches are pitching in, and nonprofit organizations are pitching in to offer vaccinations. And as soon as vaccinations are available for children, we will participate in making sure that parents have the information so that they can get their children vaccinated, and that there are vaccination clinics like we did for our teachers. And so I think it's really important that parents have the accurate information and that they're getting information from the public health officials and the CDC and heeding that guidance. So we will be doing that as well, and have been doing that all along, ensuring that we're in collaboration with Boston Health Commission, with the CDC guidance that's coming out, and the state guidance, and making sure that we adhere to that and keeping everybody safe.
Well, we're getting to the end of the summer, and even in a normal year, there will be families who have to change their plans, or maybe they just moved in and they need to sign up and find a school. How can they do that?
Well, we'd like for you to visit us at www.bostonpublicschools.org and sign up. They can also come to one of our welcome centers that are open, and you can get information on our website. You can call the Boston Public Schools, and someone will answer the phone and get information that way as well. Or you can call your local school and they can give you the information on how to register. So we really just want parents to know that it's registration time. We want to make sure that you have a bus ready for you to pick your child up and bring them to school on the first day on September 9th.
One other event, I think it's in August, the 18th, the back to school celebration. Is that still on?
At the
Right.
Salvation Army with the Croc Center, absolutely, that is on. So they can come there, get their backpack filled. It's August 18th from 10 to 2 p.m. And it's the 10th annual one with that we do in collaboration with the Salvation Army.
Great. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
This is Boston School Superintendent Brenda Cassellius. We'll have more news in just a moment.